There's no shame in saying, I believe, but Jesus, I am only human. So I need your Holy Spirit to help me in my unbelief. I think those are the prayers that lead to miracles. Welcome back to the NIV Application Bible Podcast. I'm going to dive right into the story because this is an awesome story in Mark's gospel account. Y'all know I love Mark because the narrative voice here is Peter, and Peter is my favorite of the disciples because he is the one most likely to step in it. He is a redeemed hot mess, so he's the one I identify with the most. The story is usually called the Transfiguration. And I'm going to start in verse 2 of Mark chapter 9. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John with him and led them up a high mountain where they were all alone. Then he was transfigured before them. Don't you wish we had pictures in our Bibles? I mean, I love the NIV Application Bible. The only thing that would have been better if Holy Spirit had a Polaroid camera. Because wouldn't you love to see Jesus on this huge high hill on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee? Shazam, transfigured. He's glowing white. His clothes became dazzling white, whiter than anyone in the world could bleach them. And there appeared before them Elijah and Moses, who were talking with Jesus. We need to take a redemptive rabbit trail. Remember, this is centuries after Moses died on Mount Nebo. Remember how Moses died on Mount Nebo before they crossed over into the promised land? That has always stuck in my craw. I thought, goodness gracious. I mean, I know he got mad and God disciplined him because he hit the rock. I would have hit some Israelites. They were so obnoxious and rebellious. I think, goodness gracious, all he did was smack a rock. I feel like that was kind almost. Y'all, our God is so good. Don't for a moment think his actions are punitive. It's just we're bound by time and space. Remember how we keep saying on this podcast that God is always in the process of redeeming our inherent dignity as his image bearers. Here stands Moses, centuries after he died a natural bodily death. And he's standing on this prominent point. I've stood there, at least close to this place, 4 different times when I visited Israel. And you can see from where they believe the Mount of Transfiguration took place or right near it, you can almost see the whole Sea of Galilee. It's one of those scenic points in all of Israel. There stands Moses, centuries after he died a bodily death, next to a radiant Jesus. If we were to have a little talk show here on the podcast and Moses was sitting here and there was somebody sitting here asking Moses questions, and they said, Moses, would you rather have gone into the promised land in your jar clay body with all those millions of sweaty, ingrate Israelites, or door number 2? Would you rather have trusted in the divine providence of God who works outside of time and space as we know it? Would you rather have God's ending for your story or your own? You know, he'd say door number 2. Because he got to stand in the promised land next to a glorified Jesus. Mark 9 proves that Romans 8 isn't hyperbolic. Ultimately, everything will work out for our good in God's intended purposes. That's free. That's not where we're going. So Moses and Elijah, they're standing on the Mount of Transfiguration next to Jesus. And then Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He did not know what to say. They were so frightened. Why were they frightened? Well, then a cloud appeared and covered them, and a voice came from the cloud, This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him. Suddenly, when they looked around, they no longer saw anyone with them except Jesus. You remember when the cloud came before in the Old Testament? Remember when God appeared in the form of a cloud and he told Moses, make sure all the people back up from the base of Mount Sinai. This is in Exodus chapter 19. Make sure they back up from the base of Mount Sinai because all of my power is going to be in this cloud. And they had a name for the cloud. They called it Shekinah, the dwelling glory of God himself. Well, when that happened in the Old Testament, God said, there's going to be so much power. This is going to be like an MC Hammer moment. You can't touch this. Back up from the base of the mountain. Peter's a Jewish guy. He knows these stories. They've been telling these stories for centuries. He's on top of a mountain. Jesus is glowing. There's a cloud. God's voice comes out of the cloud. Of course he's scared. He thinks they're all going to be Shazammed, that they're going to get in trouble like they would have in Exodus. Instead, God's voice says, get closer to my son. Oh my goodness, I love this story. They come down from the mountain, and just to kind of synopsize what happens next, they come down and a bunch of people are fussing, and there's a dad there with his sick son. And here's what happens when they come down. Jesus says, what are you arguing with them about? His followers are arguing with the crowd. I don't know if y'all have seen that, but I sure have noticed that on social media. Some Christians need to discipline their thumbs. A man in the crowd answered, Teacher, I brought you my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not. You unbelieving generation, Jesus replied, how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me. So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, how long has he been like this? From childhood, he answered. It has often thrown him into fire or water to kill him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. I've always wondered at that part in the story where the mama is. I wonder if that boy's mama couldn't even come. Maybe she couldn't get herself out of bed anymore. She's so devastated by her son's sickness, scared to death they're going to lose him. If you can, said Jesus, everything is possible for one who believes. I've heard that preached so many times. I've always heard Jesus saying that almost with sarcasm. I think he says it with compassion. If I can, because he heals the boy. And after he heals that boy with that evil spirit, the disciples say, how come we couldn't heal him? And Jesus responds, that only happens with prayer. It's like you missed it. Y'all were with me on the mountain, and you still think that the miracles come from you. If you aren't plugged into me, there will be no power that comes from you. The application point is this, and I love it. Faith requires humble trust. Jesus is not put off by the humble honesty of one who says, I believe, but I am not certain. If you grew up in a conservative stream of the church like I have, you probably heard that verse of the daddy saying, I believe, but help me in my unbelief. The application point says there's no shame in that. That's just acknowledging we're human. The supernatural power doesn't come from us. It comes from Holy Spirit in us. He grants what is asked to this desperate father. So we see that faith in Jesus comes as a gift and is sustained by Jesus' power. In Jesus' statement in verse 29, we learn that faith and prayer make a powerful combination. And through this entire account, we also learn that faith is not just an inner entity. It has real impacts in the real world. Faith changes human reality. If you're in a difficult chapter in your life right now, I would strongly encourage you to pay attention to that application point. There's no shame in saying, I believe, but Jesus, I am only human. So I need your Holy Spirit to help me in my unbelief. I think those are the prayers that lead to miracles, because this isn't a rule book. It's not about us having perfect behavior. It's not about us filling in every blank of our Bible studies. This is about us recognizing that the power comes from a real God who loves us more than we can possibly imagine, even when we're honest enough to say, I need help. Sometimes I think it's in the admission of help that we actually gain access to supernatural power.